Oh my god. It's been a while, hasn't it? It's almost fitting that my retro reviews have become more retro themselves as the years have gone by. Well, time for an overhaul. Okay, there are 5 mainline Final Fantasies that I have yet to review, so let's gloss over them to see which ones are actually feasible. Final Fantasy X, well, I Let's Played that game and its direct sequel, so there's no need to cover those. 11? Well, that's an MMO, I generally don't play those. 12? Okay, well, while I've only played the original version of that game, I can still provide a decent amount of insight. 13? Okay, I have a lot to say about that one. 14? That's another MMO, albeit one that was so bad that it was destroyed and replaced with its own genuinely solid remake. And 15. Okay, 12, 13, and 15 it is. Let's dive in. I'll worry about what to name this video later.
Princess, you have been chosen. Take revenge against those who stole your kingdom. Fulfill your role as savior.
Destroy them all. The Empire?
2006's Final Fantasy XII is the only mainline Final Fantasy game that is set in Evilis, the setting for both Final Fantasy Tactics and Vagrant Story. It follows the story of Van, a charming, Aladdin-esque street rat, who somehow gets wrapped up in the affairs of the real main character, Basch von Ronsenberg, a disgraced knight who is framed by his twin brother and wrongfully incarcerated for slaying one King Raminas. 12 is also the first mainline single-player game in the series that deviates from a turn-based or ATB battle system, instead allowing you to move around freely and pause time to select your attacks. It does admittedly take some getting used to, but eventually it becomes second nature, so no issues there. However, what I do take issue with is the fact that the definitive version of the game, the Zodiac version, which implements a job system and diversifies the playable characters so they don't all feel the same, wasn't officially available in the West until 2017, a full 10 years after Japan. I don't know why Square used to withhold improved versions of their games from Westerners like this. They did it with the Kingdom Hearts series as well, but I am incredibly glad that they've stopped doing it. The PS2 version that I'm familiar with had a system where all characters shared a license board and would spend license points in order to unlock weapons, armors, magics, and quickenings. What's a quickening, I hear you ask? Well, it's basically a limit break. What kind of falls flat with them is that because the characters are all completely customizable, most of them just boil down to throwing elemental magic at enemies. Which, yes, it gets results, but kinda leaves me feeling a bit empty. The quickenings kind of feel like afterthoughts, much like the Espers, who are also in this game, I guess. As per my review format, this would be the part where I give a summary of the overall plot. But 12 makes that difficult, because while I've beaten this game twice and Vorzak has beaten it 3 times, between us, neither of us could remember the story. Yeah, we remembered that there is a conquering empire and a resistance, a la Star Wars, and there's a lot of scrambling around to acquire powerful magic stones. But in a first for the Final Fantasy series, your party are not the center of the world. In fact, they're a very small part of it. Despite featuring a so-called Kingslayer and a dethroned princess, Your party spend the vast majority of this game's runtime bumbling around the desert and doing odd jobs for the Resistance, all in a bid to stop the oncoming war, I think. And while I could consult the Final Fantasy wiki to get a stronger overall picture, I'd rather tell the story as I remember it. Final Fantasy XII follows the story of Van, a charming Aladdin-esque street rat who finds a wanted poster for a rambunctious tomato monster. After hunting this mark and claiming his reward for it, he is hit with a rush of serotonin. Like this is what he was born to do. He then continues hunting monsters, despite protests from his friends that this is just a side quest and that there are more important things that he should be doing. Van's desire to hunt every notable monster in the realm leads to him joining the esteemed Clan Centurio and becoming a fully fledged monster hunter. However, something is amiss. Eventually, the jobs themselves either dry up or become a little bit too difficult for him to tackle on his own, not without some help at least. At which point, he is forced to turn to his Faustian source of power, a thick, black, amorphous ichor that calls itself the Plot, and demands that Van submerge himself in its slimy, confusing embrace for hours at a time, all in the hopes of fishing out allies and gaining access to new hunts. A task which he begrudgingly completes until the beckoning call of the Plot demands his attention once again.
Fools, you face the mightiest swordsman in all Iblis! You face me, Gilgamesh! Long have I sought the Blade of Legend. Scoured have I the furthest marches, east and west.
Yes, you are seeing this right. Gilgamesh, from Final Fantasy V, voiced by John DeFucking-Maggio, has crossed between multiple Final Fantasy games and collected forgeries of Cloud's, Squall's, Zidane's, and Tidus's weapons. And now he's infamous in this world due to his insatiable hunger for weapon collecting. This is the best thing in the game, and somehow it's completely optional. Eventually, the Plot, now containing little more than a final dungeon, gives Van free rein to complete the ultimate hunt against a giant dragon named Iazmat, who, with over 50 million HP, takes bloody ages to defeat, with only 9,999 maximum damage being dished out per hit. But despite this, Van and his friends persevere, becoming the greatest hunters of all time. Oh yeah, also, spoilers, 3, 2, 1. The Emperor becomes a robot dragon or something? I don't know, he doesn't have 50 health bars, who gives a shit? I might be goofing here, but this is what Final Fantasy XII boils down to for me. I have spent more time hunting monsters in 12 than I have in Monster Hunter, and I don't know what that says about me. And you know what? I'm actually excited to try out the Zodiac version so I can do it all again. I feel like, as a whole, I've been a little too harsh on 12. I would say that it is the most 7 out of 10 entry in the series for me, though. It's the most okay, it's fine. There are a lot of areas where it falls short, but I would rather play it 100 times over in favour of what's coming next.
Intruders on the race circuit! Confirm post position! Catch me if you can! Respond complete in force!
Hi there. Cut him off!
Watch this!
No, they will not let me.
I'm not gonna beat around the bush. Final Fantasy XIII sucks. I tried so hard to give this game every benefit of the doubt when it came out in 2010, and I would even go to bat for it. I was one of those people who would parrot the talking point that it gets better once you get near the end and are finally treated to something other than a linear corridor with scripted battles. But there is far too much that drags this experience down. The point where I finally embraced my buyer's remorse was when I played 13's direct sequels, and I realized how much better they were, how much better 13 could have been. A lot of people claim that 13's story is just as confusing as 12's, and that I do not agree with. Yes, some of the essential jargon is bafflingly relegated to text boxes, but it genuinely isn't that hard to figure out what's going on if you keep track of the following elements. This place is Cocoon. This is where the game is set. This ugly motherfucker is a fal'Cie, one of many godlike biomechanical horrors who brand innocent people with the hopes of manipulating them. Your main cast, after collectively bumbling their way into one of these things, are branded, becoming l'Cie. This means that they are tasked with performing some kind of violent deed, making them public enemies. And worse, they aren't even offered the grace of knowing what said deed even is. And this crystallized monstrosity is a CF. This hulking mass of violence is what you l'Cie become if you don't do your fucking job. What job? Figure it out yourselves, you dumb shits. I'm busy branding people. This dynamic is actually pretty good. I don't mind it. It forces the party together, whether they want to be or not. It gives them countless enemies to defend themselves from, and it introduces a ticking clock. You know, everything you need for a suspenseful, action-packed story. So, where does it fall apart? Well, you remember how I broke Final Fantasy II down into a list of pros and cons? Let's do that again. Positives first. Number 1, the music. 13's soundtrack whips ass. You heard a little bit of Leona Lewis there with the Western trailer and ending theme, which I genuinely love. But there are also a bunch of gorgeous sounding ambient themes for the multitude of locations you visit throughout your adventure.
Step into the rainbow, world you never knew. Chase the heights of light, soar beyond your sorrows.
But for me, the battle theme with the fucking intense violins is one of the catchiest that this series has ever had. And thank God, because you're going to be listening to it a lot more than you should. Number 2, the visuals. I understand that this might be a divisive point, but I actually like how this game looks. With Nomura's visual influence seeping through every facet of this game, you end up with a lot of very bright, flashy spectacles. And if you want me to get really contentious, I even like the Michael Bay-esque fight scenes. This game gives every playable party member their own summonable Eidolon, all of which appear as biomechanical beasts that transform into vehicles a la Michael Bay's Transformers, and I genuinely do think they look amazing. Especially the Eidolon of number 3, Sars Katsroy. This may come off as self-indulgent, but it's nice to have a Final Fantasy character that I can cosplay accurately. As well as being one of the most down-to-earth and humanizing portrayals of a black man in Final Fantasy, Sars is a loving single father whose 6-year-old son, Darge, is also tragically branded. At first, he's characterized as something of a bumbling coward, which what sensible person wouldn't be in this dire circumstance? But as the story goes on, his dedication to his son grows more apparent. When all hope seems lost, and it is revealed that fellow party member Vanille was the one responsible for Darge's branding in the first place, Sars is left with the option of exacting revenge.
Shoot me! For your son!
Don't you even! You think you die, and that's that? You think you die and everything will be sugar and rainbows?
Then what can I do? What do you want from me? If I can't live or die, what do you want me to do?
Don't ask me. You figure it out.
I don't know!
This, to me, is the most powerful scene in the game, and is such a turning point for Sars that it awakens his Eidolon. And somehow, I haven't even mentioned that he keeps a baby chocobo in his afro. That is fucking adorable. And not only is Sars one of the most likable characters in the game, he's also one of the only likable characters in the game. Con number 1. The characters. Except for Sars. Fang's okay too, I suppose. Vanille would be okay if she didn't sexually moan every time she fucking attacked. Half of your party are deeply unlikable. First, there is Lightning, who I remember getting so much push from Squeenix as being the definitive Final Fantasy protagonist. But, in Vorzak's words, Lightning is like if they tried to combine the worst elements of Cloud and Squall and put them through a strainer to dilute everything interesting into pure blandness. In my words, she's a rude fucking arsehole who doesn't have the necessary baggage to warrant her constant shitty attitudes.
I don't care how many years I have to wait.
Snow, I actually liked at first. He's a big boisterous bloke who identifies as the hero and punches his way through the game. Like, he actually seems kinda solid at first. However, his stubbornness, immaturity, and arrogance get incredibly frustrating as the game goes on. Granted, this is intentional, and his arc grows him out of it by the end, so he's not as bad as, say, Hope.
You're running from what you deserve.
Why don't you tell me what I deserve?
The same fate.
Oh my god, Hope. Hope. Abandon all hope, ye who try to tolerate hope. This boy is the personification of teen angst. Now, I will say, in his defense, that his mother does die quite early on in the game. He blames Snow for not rescuing her, and he is forced to tag along with a bunch of adults who are all older and more experienced than him, which naturally would leave him feeling like a bit of an outcast. However, his arc takes him from being a whiny brat to being just kind of there. The game would have absolutely benefited from his removal. He does nothing of note. Number 2, the combats. But wait, this combat looks sick, right? With the smooth movements, the big jumps, the big flashy anime attack animations. What could the issue possibly be? Well, it's all a mile wide but an inch deep. It's a lot of spectacle but very little substance. All you're doing for most of these battles is mashing the auto-attack command, occasionally switching your character's classes with the paradigm shift system, and occasionally choosing to limit break if you are far enough in the game to have unlocked them. It's all fine and serviceable, but this combat just seems to be obsessed with looking better than it is. Something I wouldn't have minded so much if Lightning Returns hadn't come along, torn off the plaster, and just embraced being a straight-up action RPG. Which 13 really should have been from the start. Number 3, and most infamously, the corridors.
Fixing to dish me already, huh? Hey now.
Oh my god, open world. It's amazing. Oh my god, it's beautiful. It's time to beat the final boss. Oh look, 2 of the party members I actually like have sacrificed themselves for a happy ending. Yeah, the memes were all true. Until the 11th hour where you are given a big field to enjoy, Final Corridor 13 has 0 exploration. Final Fantasy 1, back in the 80s, gave you more freedom to explore around its world map and carve your own path. This is inexcusable. So with that, I have now covered the most confusing game in the series, and I've ragged on one of the worst. I guess I'm just fated to be a negative Nancy for the rest of this video, right? No. Oh my god, no. Which ironically is a negative thing to say. Final Fantasy 15 is my favourite game in the whole series.
Get this! I'ma live this life in the fast lane. Moving at the speed of life and I can't slow down. Only got a gallon in the gas tank, but I'm almost at the finish line, so I can't stop now. Meaning I'm on fire off the top. Might wanna back up the data. Rolling over hip hop in a verbal tractor trailer. Homie, they spit. I make that drop like a sack of potatoes. You morons think that I'm a genius, really? I belong inside a tank and sang asylum cleaner. Driving trailer parks crazy. I am back and I'm razor sharp, baby. In this back with a capital B with an exclamation mark. Cause that's what's visible. It's I'ma treat these shell cakes seems like a soccer ball. I'ma kick the ballistics, so get this. I'ma live this life in the fast lane.
Yeah, that was Eminem. What of it? If 13 was the absence of exploration, 15 is exploration. The game revolves around a royal wedding road trip taken by one Prince Noctis and his 3 wards. It's weird to think that this game was originally planned to be a spin-off of 13, because A, it is absolutely its own beast, and B, when compared to 13, 15 is a fucking masterclass of game design. 15's intro is fantastic in setting the tone for the game as a whole. You first enjoy a sneak peek at a big bombastic endgame fight, which introduces your main cast and shows off the level of camaraderie that they will develop in time. You then jump back to the beginning, where Noctis' father, the king, sends him on a journey. Partly to get him ready for his arranged peace treaty marriage, and partly to keep him safe from an incoming Imperial attack. But this is the part where I knew this game would be something magical.
When the night has come.
Unbelievable. Not exactly a fairy tale beginning, huh, Prince Noctis?
We let ourselves get carried away.
Look, these things happen.
I played this game during the heights of the COVID pandemic, during the original lockdown, and the organic feeling of adventure and exploration that this game provides was utterly intoxicating for me. While you do have to unlock parts of the map at first, and the game is very clear about where it wants you to go, this is an incredibly freeing open world experience. Yes, you could just use your royal wagon to fast travel from story beat to story beats, knocking the game out in less than a day, but the experience is far more rewarding when you choose to leave your whip. You can run around the continent on foot, you can find side quests at food stands and gas stations, you can enjoy camping and training with your party, go fishing, ride chocobos, take photos enough to fill a whole goddamn album. This game is not only fun to explore, but its expansive leveling system is designed in such a way that you can actually benefit from being an outdoorsman. You can design a build that rewards you AP for exploring. So the time you spend running around acting like a royal Bear Grylls, gradually getting dirtier and more disheveled as you tussle with nature, actually makes you tougher. Or if you're the type who prefers long drives or road trips, you can order Ignis to chauffeur you around while you listen to classic Final Fantasy music. And even better, you can get AP for doing that too. This game is built to accommodate your playstyle, and while you do play solely as Noctis for the most part, the journey never feels particularly lonely, mostly due to your party. While all three of them are your loyal subjects, they all treat you very differently, and their banter never gets old. Ignis is an incredibly formal caretaker and chef, who defends you with a pair of knives and is quick to remind you of your royal standing. Gladiolus is a big, sword-wielding bruiser who acts as a mentor and is not afraid to scold you when absolutely necessary. And last of all, there is Prompto, who, aside from just being your best mate, rocks a pistol and a camera in battle, in order to pull off, honest to God, in-battle selfies. Prompto is my fucking favourite, and even better, he seems to be having just as much fun as me, the player. All three of these guys rule, and I wouldn't trade them for the world. I wish I could take them into other Final Fantasy games with me. And somehow, I've not even talked about the combat yet. Mainly because the framework of this game is so very engaging. This is the first mainline Final Fantasy that fully throws off the shackles of traditional RPGs and becomes a full-on action RPG. You can attack, dodge, parry, prepare spells with unique boons, tactically retreat, team up with your buddies for combo attacks, take control of them directly for even stronger attacks, and, when you're far enough into the story, pull off a deeply satisfying limit break that sees you becoming a whirling dervish of violence. This is, bar none, my favourite combat system in the whole series. I will be very, very excited if 16 takes inspiration from it in the same way that 7's remake did. Now, I have seen people complain that this game is relatively short when compared to other Final Fantasies, but to that, I say good. The game doesn't overstay its welcome. I'm of the opinion that RPGs don't need to be 100 hours long to be good. No video game does. And if you're really that starved for content, just play all of the side quests and all of the DLC campaigns. I promise you'll get your money's worth. The DLC campaigns in particular offer a nice mix of side stories and what-if stories, allowing you to take control of your other party members, as well as the main villain, Ardyn, who might be one of the best in the series. I've seen many nerds argue about whether Kefka or Sephiroth are the best Final Fantasy final boss, but you can't instigate a minor traffic collision with either of them, so checkmate.
Hey, Iggy, can your glasses take the heat?
Well, I don't see why they shouldn't.
Even if they couldn't, he'd still be alright.
Yeah, Iggy's eyes ain't that bad.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my vision is passable without corrective lenses.
To go more into Arden, this guy appears fairly early on and is not shy about the fact that he's a big deal in the very same hostile empire that you are trying to placate. However, as the game unfolds and the hope of a peaceful resolution dwindles, Arden's arrogant, swaggering, Mick Jagger-esque facade begins to drop, and his predetermined role as your fated nemesis, a role that he quite clearly didn't ask for, becomes incredibly apparent. This is the least that I've ever wanted to spoil the ending of a Final Fantasy game, because I really want you to play this one, so fuck it, I won't. Go play it. You can buy the base game pre-owned for absolute peanuts, or you can buy the Royal Edition or the Windows Edition in order to get a more complete experience. And hey, mods exist. Have fun with those. So there are 3 more hot Final Fantasy takes for you. But don't think that's all from me, because this month I'm going to go in hard with the Final Fantasy series, knocking out at least 1 more review and 2 Final Fantasy themed episodes of VidAMs. So watch this space. Thanks a million for your support, especially to all of my patrons: Anonymous, Dan Brown, Fitzwilliam Ramsbottom, Jack Mortar, Pixel Pusher, Romeo, Shameboy, Thomas Walker, and Toon Pirates. See y'all soon.